Hey there, it's Silver. This is Phantom Rose 2 Sapphire. So this is, well, it's kind of a deck building roguelite, but it's also not entirely. It's using similar ideas to those sorts of games, but is also kind of turning a lot of them on their heads and creating something that, in my opinion, is entirely unique. So the first thing to get into is, of course, the art style, because it looks very pretty. This is a lovely hand-drawn art style with some really smart use of color. It tends to have a lot of very dismal and dark scenes, but it uses pops of bright blues and deep purples and things like that in order to make stuff contrast and pop out a little bit more. So it uses a lot of cool colors of various shades, and it creates this kind of serene but also creepy atmosphere. And this is combined with the music, which is quite good in my opinion, to sort of tie it all together. So you get this kind of zen state of everything, but at the same time it's all a little bit unsettling and strange. The enemy models in particular are really well drawn and they look very cool. Oftentimes they're quite twisted and strange looking, but they're also a little bit familiar, just familiar enough to make your brain freak out a little bit in terms of how they transform into these weird monstrosities. And that's kind of the theme of the game in general. It's all very dreamlike logic. And you'll also meet several more friendly NPCs along the way, and they all also have some really nice portraits and art and things. It's all very an anime-esque art style, but it's also not entirely 100% anime related. Because you've also got some things like the use of color that I mentioned and stuff like sort of graphic novel shading techniques and things that give it this really nice atmosphere. And I think the overall look of the game is definitely one of its strongest points. The way that the enemies look in battle is just really cool, and the way that the bosses especially look is very memorable, and it helps to combine with the music to create these pretty memorable moments. And in fact, there are these moments where you can actually dive into the backstories of several of the NPCs that you meet, and these also have their own illustrations and their own music and stuff to them, and it's almost a little bit noir-esque, at least in my opinion, in terms of the storytelling, especially when it comes to the more piano-y bits in the background and the sort of dark atmosphere and everything. It's a little bit noir graphic novel-y storytelling. It's pretty cool, so I'm definitely a fan of the way that the game looks, but the way that it plays is the real star here, because it does a lot of very strange things with the deck building formula. So the way that it works is you will be exploring these various floors of each stage, and you can click between usually a left or a right path, although usually in the middle you get a choice between 3 paths instead, and once you choose a path you're sort of stuck on that one until the next split. So you split yourself around the floors going on each path, and you'll find all sorts of stuff from sort of Slay the Spire style multiple choice event with all kinds of different outcomes, of course various shops of different kinds where you can meet these characters, learn their stories, and also buy things from them for different currencies. There's also one type of node that's an investigation node where you choose from one of 4 sort of random spots, and different things can happen from combat to a multiple choice, almost like a memory card game for benefits, or maybe it'll give you a spread of 9 cards that you can flip over, and if you manage to flip over one with a reward before you run out of flips, then you get that reward, so it's sort of like a treasure minigame. But of course, in the midst of all this other stuff you can find, one of the main things you're going to be finding are battles, and the way the battle system works is pretty cool. So you'll notice that you have a spread of 4 cards in the middle of the screen whenever a battle begins, and 2 of the cards will be placed and 2 of them will be empty. The 2 cards that are placed are actually your opponent's cards, and the 2 empty spots are where you can choose your own cards to put there, and then when you go to the next turn, both you and the enemy act at the same time, and each card will always be played from left to right. So unlike most deck builders, instead of having a deck that you pull a hand from every turn and then play whatever you've got, instead you actually have access to your entire deck at once. You have between 2 different types of cards. You have attack cards, which are pretty much what they sound like. They're usually your offensive, aggressive options. And then you have magic cards, which are everything else. Utility, some of them can do magic, some of them can give you buffs or give the enemy debuffs or all sorts of things like that. So they're everything else in one category. And yeah, you have access to all of them at once. You don't draw cards at all, but every card has a cooldown. And the cooldown is based on the level of the card. Every card has a level, and higher level cards are just stronger. So if you've got a level 5 card, then after you use it, it'll be on cooldown for 5 turns. So even though most deck builders are about strategy in general, this game in particular is raw tactics, because everything is based on sort of responding to what the enemy is doing or trying to outdo what they're doing with your own stuff, because you're always shown that track of 4 spaces and you can put your cards in there. So if there's, say, an empty space and then an enemy shield card that will shield them, and then another empty space, and then an enemy attack card that will hurt you, what you might choose to do is put an attack in that first empty space so that you can do some damage to them before their shield comes up, and then put a shield in that third empty space so that you can protect yourself before that fourth space attack hits you. And so this is what you're doing every turn, but of course you're also managing your cooldowns while you're doing this, because you can't just front load your most powerful stuff immediately necessarily, since everything's going to go on cooldown. And by the way, cooldowns persist between battles, so if you put all of your really high value, high damage cards on cooldown by the end of an easier battle just to get it done quickly, you may encounter a harder battle later, and then you're going to start that battle with most of your cards still on cooldown, so that could be a problem for you. So you've got to manage these cooldowns between battles as well as in the battle itself. Another pretty unique idea is how buffs and debuffs work. You and the opponent both have a buff and a debuff slot, but only one slot for each, meaning you can only have one buff and one debuff each. And if you get another one, it replaces the one that's currently in there. So you might deliberately choose a card that gives you 1 stack of bleeding, which might seem like a bad thing, but if the enemy gives you like 5 stacks of burning all of a sudden and you really don't want to take all that damage, you can then just use that bleeding card to replace it entirely, and you only have 1 turn of bleeding to deal with, which is much easier for you to manage. The enemy can also do this to themselves, and you've also, of course, got to be wary of having a really good buff that is going to last a while replaced by a simpler, shorter-lived one if you're not careful, so you can't like stack yourself up with a bunch of buffs at the same time. You got to pick one that you actually want to keep. All this comes together to make a really interesting combat system that's pretty fast-paced, and even though it's technically turn-based, it's turn-based in the sense that both you and your opponent take your turns at the exact same time. Once you complete a battle, you will be given a card as a reward, but you can choose to skip it if you don't want to add it to your deck. Eventually, you can get the ability to choose from 2 different rewards. You'll be given 2 cards, and you can choose which one you want to keep, or skip both if you wish. And also, if you beat an elite enemy by rescuing a student, which gives you a bit of a buff and stuff, or be a final boss of the floor before you move on to the next floor, they'll give you 2 choices of 2 cards instead of just the 1. And this is where another interesting mechanic comes in. So in most deck builders, you have a minimum deck size, and you want to keep to that size as close as possible because you're ideally building for some sort of specific mechanic, some gimmick that you want to be able to do reliably. So you don't want a bunch of extra cards bulking up your deck, so you're more likely to draw what you need at any given time rather than having a bunch of the extra fluff that you don't really need that's making your draws less valuable. So, you know, card removal in a deck builder is very valuable because the idea is you want to trim the fat, as it were, and have only the stuff that you can immediately use and nothing else. This game works a bit differently, and instead you have a maximum deck size rather than a minimum size. Because the game is based entirely around managing card cooldowns and you have your entire deck available at once, you're not worried about drawing the right thing for the right time because you always have all of them drawn at all times. So having more cards is actually beneficial in this game because that gives you more options at once. However, the really neat thing about the maximum card limit in this game is that it's kind of a risk-reward mechanic because it's not a hard limit. If you have, say, a 15 card limit and you have 15 cards and you choose one, it'll still let you choose it. You can actually go above your limit as much as you want. However, if you ever choose to go to a camp node, the nodes that you can spend some money to heal yourself at, you can't leave the camp node until you burn enough cards to get back down to the maximum. So if you're above your maximum, you can burn cards and get some sapphires, which are basically the gold in this game. Sapphires are one of the in-run currencies that you earn from battles and stuff that you'll use to heal yourself or to buy new cards and stuff like that. And so yeah, this means that if you want, you can choose to have a huge deck that's way bigger than your normal deck size should allow, but you have to avoid going to any camps to heal yourself in order to actually keep it that way, because as soon as you go to one, then you gotta trim it down to its maximum size. I find this to be a really neat idea, personally. I think it's cool that you can deliberately overflow the deck and make it bigger than it should be, but only if you avoid healing, and then as soon as you have to heal yourself, you gotta go back down to the normal maximum. And the maximum does increase, by the way, over time. As you beat bosses and complete floors, you'll get a bigger maximum for that run. There are also a couple of other currencies to worry about. There are phantom roses, which you only get from like harder enemies mostly and things like that, although there are occasionally some random events where you'll find a few. And these are usually spent on very powerful bonuses or very potent items or something like that at rare shops. So these are your more rare currencies that you're only going to spend occasionally. You can also get diamonds, which you mostly get from doing quests, like there'll be a challenge like, open a chest or rescue 2 students and things like that. And once you do these, you get some diamonds as a reward. And diamonds can be spent on a couple of things. For one, you can choose to spend some to redo a battle where you lost instead of immediately going back to the main menu. If you think you can still do it, you can burn some diamonds in order to try it again. You can also use diamonds to ambush a floor boss, which will cause you to start the fight with some of its health gone. And you can also use them outside of battle to buy cosmetics for your character, because you can actually look different in a lot of different ways. There are cosmetic outfits and different weapons for you to have and stuff like that. They're all purely cosmetic. They don't offer any gameplay advantages or anything, but they're just things that you can earn through playing the game. And I know this might sound kind of like a mobile game premium currency, but it's not. You cannot buy these with microtransactions or anything. You gotta earn diamonds by playing. You cannot buy them. You'll also be going through different adventures. It's not just like a randomly generated adventure each time. There are actually several sort of story adventures. Each one will help to tell you more of the story, and you'll meet new characters and stuff. And they're ranked by like material. So you'll go through the silver adventure and then the gold adventure and then like the diamond 1 adventure all the way up to like the diamond 16 or something ridiculous like that. And they'll get harder and longer each time so that you'll have more stuff to do. And as you complete these adventures, you'll also earn these other currencies that are spent as like a meta currency in between runs to give yourself permanent upgrades, like more choices in between fights or permanent deck size increases or being able to hold more items. I should mention there are items you can find both of the usable consumable variety that you can use in battle for an effect, and in the passive just hold this and it does something for you variety of various rarities, and they tend to be quite powerful, but you have a limited number of slots that you can actually hold, so you can't stack up artifacts infinitely. You can only hold a certain number of them. I should also mention that there are 2 classes to play. There's the Blade class, which is your more straightforward physical attacker class that works exactly how I've explained so far, but there's also a Mage class, which is really fun, that works a bit differently. Both classes have a sort of generic pool of cards that they both pull from, but they also have class-specific cards that only they can find. And the Mage class has an energy gauge, and you actually have to spend this energy to play cards. Basically, if you play a magic card, it gives you 1 energy back, but if you play an attack card, it costs energy to put on the field based on what place you're putting it in. So if you're putting it in the 3rd position, then it costs 3 energy. So the Mage class is capable of really tremendous burst damage and often has pretty low cooldown cards for how powerful they can be, but they've got to constantly juggle this energy gauge and keep it restored and keep it going and stuff in order to actually use their cards correctly. So they're a more advanced class to play, technically, but they are a lot of fun, and I really enjoy playing the Mage. And they got some really cool card effects and stuff, too. You'll also find that you'll get new unlocked cards that you can find in future adventures by beating bosses and stuff, oftentimes cards related to what they could do. And you'll find that there are a lot of pretty clever effects with these cards. There are cards that cancel every card after them, so depending on where you put them in the line of 4, you might have a serious advantage. Or cards that only do a certain effect if they're placed in a certain spot. Or cards that only have a special effect if they're played within, say, the first 3 rounds, or they're played only on an odd-numbered round, and all sorts of clever stuff like that. So there's a huge amount of layers of strategy in this game, and the overall sort of moment-to-moment tactics in the gameplay makes you feel real smart when you actually manage to not take any damage, avoid whatever the enemy is doing, and then counter with something huge and actually win the battle. So my verdict for this game is that it is a fantastic deck builder. It's a really, really good example of the genre in a way that isn't like most other games in the genre, which is probably why it stands out so much. And standing out in a very crowded genre like this can be quite difficult, so I appreciate when a game sort of flips all the conventions on their heads and does something wholly unique, and that's exactly what Phantom Rose 2 is doing. Its strategy and its gameplay is really satisfying to figure out. It's almost like a puzzle game in terms of how its combat works, but it's a really interesting puzzle game to solve with a lot of different solutions depending on what sorts of builds you want to play. It's also got 2 entirely separate campaigns with 2 storylines that are very long between both of the classes, so there's a lot of content here for you to go through, plus all sorts of cool unlockable stuff like new cosmetics and things that you can actually earn by playing instead of by buying them. How cool is that? So yeah, definitely I recommend this game 100%. This is a wholehearted recommend from me. This is just such a unique example of the genre that I can't not smile when I play it because it's just that fun. So thank you guys very much for watching. I will put the link as always in the description below this video to the Steam store page for Phantom Rose 2 Sapphire, and I'll see you guys next time.